Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Live Well and Stay Healthy Wellness webinar series brought to you by the Family and Community Health Sciences Department of Rutgers Cooperative Extension. My name is Joanne Kidsey, and I am the FCHS educator here in Atlantic and Ocean counties, and I will serve as your host today, along with Rachel Tansey. She's online too. We are so excited for this presentation today on controlling your cancer risk, certainly a topic that we can all benefit from. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Ashley Perper. She is a community cancer control specialist with Rutgers Cancer Institute of New Jersey. As part of the community outreach and engagement team, she is responsible for educating the community on various cancer prevention and screening topics through workshops and other outreach opportunities. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Biology from Westchester University and began working with the Cancer Institute after obtaining her Master's of Public Health degree in 2021. Ashley also works part-time as an EMT throughout central New Jersey. When she is not working, Ashley spends her spare time playing rugby, acting both as vice president and captain of her club team. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. So as mentioned, my name is Ashley. I'm a community cancer control specialist, and I'm here today to talk to you about how you can control your cancer risk. I also do want to apologize if you can see my Zoom controls popping up a few times. I'm not sure why that's happening, but it shouldn't affect anything on the presentation. So before we get into the presentation, I just want to remind everyone this presentation is for educational purposes only. Please see your doctor or another qualified healthcare professional with any questions regarding a specific medical condition or specific treatment. So our workshop objectives for today, we are going to talk a little bit about how cells mutate and initiate cancer growth. We're going to understand the differences between sporadic and hereditary risk factors. We're going to discuss gene function as it relates to cancer, and then talk about how cancer genes can be passed down through a family, through biological parents. And before we get started, I am going to just launch a little pre-test here. It's going to come up as a poll. It's just going to be 4 true-false statements, so you should just have the options to answer true or false. So statement 1 is you will always get cancer if you carry a gene mutation. 2, you can pass along a cancer-linked mutation even if you don't develop the cancer yourself. 3, you can make lifestyle changes to reduce your cancer risk. And 4, age is the #1 risk factor for cancer. Again, these are true-false. On the screen I see it's yes, no. So I'll just leave this up for a few moments. We will take the same little poll again towards the end of the presentation just to see if anyone has learned anything new throughout the presentation, and that's when we will discuss the answers. All right, just a few more seconds. Seems like we have a majority of the people answering.
We have about 70%, so that's, pretty good. If everyone can just complete it, we have a few more people and then we should be good.
I always say I need to find some type of music to play during this part of the Jeopardy theme or something.
Yeah.
All right, we're at 75%, so I think that's a pretty good number. So I'm just going to end the poll. And again, we'll do this again at the end and we'll talk about the answers. Okay, so we're going to be spending a majority of today talking about risk factors for cancer. So first, let's talk about what is a risk factor. Well, a risk factor is anything that increases your chances of getting a disease, in this case, cancer. Today, we'll be separating cancer risk into 2 categories, hereditary and sporadic. Hereditary risk factors are passed down from your biological parents. Hereditary cancer risk is linked to inherited gene mutations, which have been scientifically proven to be related to the development of certain cancers. It's commonly thought that cancer runs in the family. While this may be the case, only about 5 to 10% of cancers are actually hereditary in nature. Sporadic risk factors develop over the course of a person's life. These can be anything from your lifestyle habits, exposure to certain chemicals, radiation, or even just the natural aging process. As we'll discuss later on, age can be considered the #1 risk factor for cancer. Basically, all cancer is due to genetic mutations. It is just a difference on whether these mutations are inherited from your family or they develop throughout your life due to an external factor. So cancer, like many other diseases, is a genetic disease. However, the word genetic is often misused in reference to illness or disease. Here, we're using the term genetic to refer to the gene itself, which, when altered or mutated, can cause abnormal cell function and growth. It's this uncontrolled cell growth that leads to the formation of cancerous cells. Cancer is primarily a disease of aging, and this is because it generally takes a while for these mutations to accumulate and develop and lead to cancer over time. As we age, it is extremely important to stay up to date on our healthcare appointments, those preventative screenings, especially cancer screening, since that's what we're here talking about today. Many cancers can be prevented, or if they're detected early, they're easier to treat as a result of these routine screenings, blood work, routine physicals, etc. Before we do a really deep dive into cancer risk assessment, I just want to briefly discuss what's actually happening in our bodies in relation to an increased risk for cancer. So every person, I promise this is as sciencey as it's going to get. So after this slide, there's not going to be too much science. So every person is made up of around 37 trillion cells. A person's genetic material is located within chromosomes in the cell's center. A genetically healthy individual has 46 total chromosomes per cell, with a pair of 23 being inherited from each of our biological parents. DNA, which is considered our genetic instruction manual, is located within those chromosomes. As you can see on the slide, the human genes are located within the DNA. Most of the over 20,000 human genes are exactly the same in every single person, all of us. However, the genes that vary, which is actually less than 1% of all genes that are varying between us, are what make us different in personality, appearance, and disease risk. To summarize, the gene can be considered the basic physical and functional unit of heredity. As we've mentioned, each person inherits one copy of each gene from their biological parents. Genes are especially important for producing proteins, which carry out vital tasks for our bodies, which can be anything from preventing tumors from forming or killing off damaged cells. We can think of genes as, notes on a sheet of music. If everyone started out as the same song, we can change individual notes or sections of the music to create an alternate tempo or scale or whatever. Family members often have similar genetic makeups, so they have similar songs, which is why siblings or cousins may look similar, and also why some diseases seem to run in a family. So here we have a diagram which shows how cancer might be passed down in a family. Since genes are passed down from our parents, who also have 2 sets of genes, we have a chance of inheriting 2 of 4 versions of a given gene. So let's take a quick look at this graphic to better understand heredity and how cancer can spread. So the male at the top of this diagram, the very top, he is colored in red. He is affected with cancer and is a cancer that is linked to a genetic mutation. He reproduced with a female who is unaffected, has no cancer genes, does not have cancer, etc. You can see that their children are kind of all over the place. You have some that are unaffected, they're not a carrier. Those are the ones in blue. You have some that are a carrier for the gene, but they do not have the cancer themselves. Those are the ones that are colored in yellow. And then you have some of the children who are affected with cancer and they are colored in red. But what's important to note here is on the very far left, you can see that the one male child is colored in yellow. I wonder if you can see my cursor, maybe not. Right here in yellow. So he has the gene for cancer, but does not have cancer. And he reproduces with a female who unaffected, no cancer causing genes, etc. But their children, some of them do end up with cancer. So you can be a carrier without developing cancer yourself, but can pass that gene on to your offspring. And this is why it's important to understand your family history of, not only just cancer, but any chronic disease. Just because your parents, grandparents, or siblings may not have cancer, there is a chance that they have a cancer-causing gene that's present somewhere in your family line. So we keep talking a lot about mutations and stuff like that. So what is a mutation? A mutation is a change or changes to a person's DNA, generally due to a gene level issue caused by an error during just cell division, a viral infection, chemical radiation exposure. And although the word mutation can sound pretty negative, it has that negative connotation, it's important to note that not all genetic mutations are detrimental. They may be beneficial, such as being a very fast runner or having a photographic memory. And they can also cause little to no effect on a person at all. So these neutral and beneficial genes, they serve as an important source of genetic variation amongst us. One example of this, Michael Phelps, the medalist, highest medal earning swimmer in history, actually has some genetic mutations that make him better suited for swimming. His body produces half the amount of lactic acid than average. He has, webbed fingers and toes. His arms are just naturally longer than they would be. So, not all mutations are bad. And they can even make you an Olympic athlete. So when we have these mutations, they carry over when the cells divide and copy. Just like humans, bodily cells have reproductive and life cycles. With this cell death, sometimes it's predetermined and programmed. So when cells age or are damaged, new cells eventually take their place. But because certain genes control this process of the healthy and regulated cell division, if one of those genes is damaged or mutated or altered in some way, it can lead to an uncontrolled growth of abnormal cells. And it's this uncontrolled cell division is how cancer forms. Because abnormal cells are capable of faster growth and division, they are able to overtake a cellular environment and turn healthy tissue into unhealthy tissue. Here on the right, we have an example of normal cell division, which is at the top. You can see the red cells are those normal cells. A cell gets damaged, and then the cell dies, and that's it. It'll get replaced by a new healthy cell. But underneath, you can see how if that damaged cell is not killed off, it can just reproduce rapidly. And this is what leads to that formation of a cancerous mass or a tumor. And tumors have the ability to affect and alter healthy cells around them. In this diagram, we see the uniform nature of the healthy cells. There are the ones in that purplish, pinkish color. And then there's that difference in size and shape of the unhealthy cancer cells, which are the ones colored in blue. You can see they look more amorphous and blobby, and they just don't look as uniform as the healthy cells. And because tumors grow at such a fast rate compared to healthy cells, their genetic makeup is subject to constant change. Similar to how mutations can form in healthy cells, tumor cells can also mutate. But since they are growing faster, mutations occur faster. Tumor cells can also detach from the original tumor and spread to other parts of the body. This is the process known as metastasis. These are some of the features of an advanced cancer, which becomes much more difficult to treat than one that is detected early, which is why you want to stay up to date on your cancer screenings, because if it's caught early, it's easier to treat, it hasn't spread to other parts of your body. So we just spoke a little bit about heredity, so we are going to talk about sporadic risk factors now. And again, these can be anything from your lifestyle habits, certain exposures, and the natural aging process. Some of the most common sporadic risk factors for cancer are also considered risk factors just for overall general health. These factors include smoking, being overweight, leading a sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, alcohol use, some other sporadic risk factors, sun exposure, contracting certain viruses like HPV and HIV can lead to the development of certain cancers as well. So oftentimes, it is believed that cancer might run in a person's family, but as we mentioned before, only about 5 to 10% of cancers are actually hereditary in nature, meaning they come from the genes, from your parents. In most cases, the cancer itself isn't related to a genetic mutation, but rather common lifestyles and behaviors amongst a family. For example, if you're from a food insecure household over an extended period of time, there will likely be poor dietary habits across generations, which may heighten their risk for diseases that are linked to, a poor diet. So if you grow up in a house where smoking is very prevalent, you are more likely to smoke, or you're more likely to be exposed to that secondhand smoke. So if the smoker has lung cancer, you're at a higher risk for lung cancer. So while that lung cancer isn't hereditary, it's just your family is being exposed to similar risk factors. So here we have a graphic that displays the percent of cancer cases in adults over 30 years of age that are directly related to each of these sporadic risk factors. Tobacco use does have the highest link to cancer, with almost 20% of cancer cases being attributed to cigarette smoking or tobacco use. Your personal cancer risk can also increase if multiple risk factors are present. For example, if a person smokes, drinks alcohol, is overweight, and doesn't exercise, they may have a higher overall cancer risk than if they were just drinking alcohol, but otherwise were leading a healthy life. The good news with this is that we can change the way we behave and the way we live to reduce or manage our personal risk. So this constant practice of unhealthy risk factors can result in what is known as an epigenetic change. So rather than the gene being mutated at a cellular level, the epigenetic change changes how the gene is expressed. So this is often reversible and isn't something that you would pass on to your biological children. So again, the gene itself isn't being altered, just the way the gene is being expressed. And we can change that. We can eat a little bit healthier, move a little bit more, quit smoking, drink a little bit less alcohol, make sure we're getting proper rest at night. Wearing sunscreen, another really big one, which I forgot to put on here, but sunscreen is very important to reduce your risk of skin cancer. But despite all of these behavioral risk factors, cancer is predominantly a disease of aging, meaning your likelihood of developing cancer increases as you get older. In the United States, about 87% of all cancer cases occur after the age of 50. This is because cancer generally requires an accumulation of factors over a person's lifespan. As we age, we accumulate different exposures to sporadic and environmental factors, which may act on their own, or if you couple that with a hereditary factor, will lead to cancer. And on this graph, I highlighted where the age 50 to 54, and you can see afterwards, it just, the cancer cases just kind of skyrocket after this red box here. Here we just have the average age of diagnosis for the 4 most common cancer sites in the US, breast, prostate, colorectal, and lung cancer. Breast cancer does have the lowest average age compared to the rest of the cancers because many breast cancers are hereditary in nature and are linked to, those genetic conditions. And one main highlighting factor of something being a genetic disease is an earlier age of diagnosis. We're going to discuss some specific genes to breast cancer a couple slides down the road, but this just is showing that once you are over 50, your risk does increase. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about hereditary cancers. These cancers, as I just mentioned with certain breast cancers, are diagnosed at an unusually young age. This is often a telltale sign that your cancer is linked to an inherited gene mutation, or likely linked. Other potential traits of hereditary cancers include multiple cancer types in one person and those really rare and unusual cases of cancer. There are some hereditary syndromes that have very serious effects on genes that would normally act to prevent the formation of tumors, leading to many instances of uncontrolled cell growth and division. As we know, hereditary cancers make up the minority of cancer cases, but there is still a possibility that if a type of cancer runs in your family, it may be associated with a gene mutation that is being passed down through the generations. So to use an example, we're going to briefly discuss how the BRCA1 gene increases a person's risk for certain types of cancer. BRCA1 is commonly referred to as the breast cancer gene. A healthy BRCA1 gene is responsible for repairing damaged DNA and suppressing tumor formation in cells. When this gene is damaged or mutated, BRCA1 is heavily linked to hereditary and triple-negative breast cancers. Before the age of 80, roughly 72% of women with a BRCA1 mutation will develop breast cancer, while 44% will develop ovarian cancer. There is also an unrelated gene, the BRCA2 gene, or breast cancer 2, which does have similar effects on hereditary cancer, but the BRCA1 and BRCA2 are distinct from each other. They don't act in tandem. Here we can see the dramatic effects of a BRCA gene mutation on breast cancer risk. Women with an inherited mutation are over 7 times as likely to develop breast cancer during their lives. I'm just going to leave this slide up for a few seconds so we can digest the information. The group of people, women on the very far right, show that with a BRCA gene mutation, about 87 out of 100 women with the mutation will develop breast cancer, while people without the mutation, it's only about 12%, 12 out of 100. Similarly, we see that women who carry a BRCA mutation are over 25 times as likely to develop ovarian cancer as well. So again, we can see here on the right, if you have a BRCA gene mutation, there's about a 40% risk. So about 40 out of 100 women will develop ovarian cancer, while the average is 1.5 out of 100. When considering hereditary disease, it's important to remember that we receive 1 copy of every gene from each parent. That means genes do not discriminate by gender identification. A mother can pass a damaged gene to her son, a father to his daughter, etc. Oftentimes, and in the case specifically of the BRCA gene, a damaged gene is linked to a heightened cancer risk in both men and women. Men who carry this BRCA1 mutation are more susceptible to prostate, pancreatic, and even male breast cancers. And again, you can see on this family tree that these ages of diagnoses are relatively young. So breast cancer at age 48, ovarian at 53, male breast cancer, this last generation breast cancer at age 35. All of this information highlights the importance of knowing and understanding your personal cancer risk. If possible, try and find out any relevant medical history from family members, and make sure to share as much information as possible with your healthcare team. There's even a possibility that your personal cancer screening recommendations might change based on personal and family medical history. So now I just want to show a short video of a family that was affected with breast cancer. I'm going to play it. Please let me know if you can't hear it. It was playing earlier, so hopefully it still works.
That's my great daughter.
And this is my father, my amazing dad. And he's a wonderful support system.
So I remember I was showering, I felt the lump on my right side. So I went to my primary doctor and she examined me and she says, you know what, let's get it biopsied. About a week later, they called me. They said, all right, you have male breast cancer. Then I said, y'all playing with me. Men don't have, they don't get breast cancer. And they said, oh, you got to get genetically tested. And through that, I found out that I carry the BRCA2 gene. I said, wait a minute, I could give this to my kids.
He called and was trying to explain it. And at that time, I think I was like, I'm 32, I'm young, no problem. But then my doctor, she's like, just to be proactive, let's get a mammogram. And that's when they found my cancer.
So right there, I hit rock bottom. I took it as, wow, I passed this on to my kids already. But she said, Dad, we're gonna beat this. Don't worry about it, we're gonna beat this.
He would go to my chemo treatments, I would go to his.
Yeah. And that's how we got through. We got through.
You always hear father and daughter bond of dancing or fishing or basketball. But our bond and what got us close together was breast cancer. You know, I think he saved my life, because if he did not find this, by the time I would have hit 40, it would have been too late.
She was my rock, and she's my daughter, and I love her dearly. But she's my friend.
All right, so I wanted to show that video for a few reasons. One, just to highlight the idea that people assigned male at birth are also at risk for developing breast cancer. And two, to really highlight the importance of family history. Vanessa stated she was about 32 when her dad told her he had a mutated BRCA gene, leading her to get a mammogram 8 years earlier than the recommended age. We'll discuss this a little bit more on the next slide, but meaning they were able to catch her breast cancer at an early stage. Had she waited till she was 40, who knows what stage the disease may have been in at that time. So now, just for an example of how screening recommendations might change depending on a person's cancer risk, we can use the American Cancer Society's most recent breast cancer screening recommendations. So a woman is considered to be at average risk if she doesn't have a personal history of breast cancer, there's no known strong family history, and there's no known genetic mutation that would increase the risk of breast cancer, and has not had any chest radiation therapy before the age of 30. So it is recommended that someone at average risk begin their annual mammograms at the age of 40, between 40 and 44. So women who are at high risk, like we saw in the last video, Vanessa, are those with a known cancer-linked gene mutation, such as BRCA1 or BRCA2, meaning, you know, she had a first-degree relative with a known gene mutation, or someone who received radiation treatment to the chest area between the ages of 10 and 30. So for these high-risk patients, the American Cancer Society recommends not only an annual mammogram, but also breast MRIs, and that these annual screenings begin as early as 30, which is why it's important that your doctor or healthcare professional knows of any potential risks that your family may have. So to wrap things up, we're going to discuss how the knowledge of hereditary cancer risk affects cancer prevention outcomes and treatment. So one potential service is genetic testing. Genetic testing refers to the processes and techniques used to determine details about a person's DNA, which can reveal important family health information and potential disease risk. This information includes potential cancer-related gene mutations and heightened cancer risk. As we've just seen, there are cases where a person is at an extremely heightened risk of cancer due to hereditary causes. Genetic testing can also be useful after a diagnosis takes place. These tests can reveal how a person may respond to certain treatments, respond to certain medications, and this can help really optimize a patient's treatment plan. So there are a number of different tests available that can be used to identify a person's risk of inheriting or passing on a cancer-linked gene mutation. There is predictive testing, which is done before symptoms are present and determines a person's disease risk if a family member is known, has a known genetic disorder. Diagnostic tests, which can confirm or rule out genetic disorders. There's pharmacogenic testing, which gives the healthcare provider an idea of how to best treat a patient and avoid as many side effects as possible from these treatments. Reproductive tests can be done before, during, or after pregnancy, used preventatively to find out if there's a genetic variant in their child. And something that's become really big over the last few years are these direct-to-consumer testing. These tests are completed at home, sent into a testing center, such as, I think 23andMe is one of the really big ones. So this is just an example of a gene testing panel from Ambry Genetics for hereditary breast cancer. This left-hand column includes the different genes that may represent a risk for hereditary breast cancers, while the column on the right indicates associated cancers and potential risks if these gene mutations exist. If patients are concerned that they may have inherited a cancer-associated gene mutation, they may want to see a genetic testing company or go to someone who can do genetic tests. Another option is genetic counseling. Genetic counselors are healthcare providers who have specialized knowledge in the field of genetics and as well as counseling and support. They can specialize in many different healthcare fields, including prenatal health, pediatrics, cardiovascular health, neurology, and oncology. Genetic counselors can be especially helpful in sorting out resources regarding inherited conditions that may affect a patient or their family members. They can help guide them through further tests and next steps, or just offers the psychological support, including shared decision-making and adapting to the newfound knowledge of a condition or a heightened disease risk. Excuse me. So now, we have made it back to our fun little post test. Again, these are going to be the same poll questions we saw at the beginning of the presentation. They are going to be true, false statements. The statements are the same as before. Once we get a majority of participation, we'll talk about the answers, and then we will just briefly discuss some resources that are available to you and your family.
Looks like we're at almost 50%. So hopefully we can get a good 75, if not 100 this time.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get at least back up to the 75 we saw the first go around.
We'll just give it another minute or so. If everyone can please complete it, we'd greatly appreciate it.
All right, I'll give it about like 15 more seconds, and then I just want to be mindful of everyone's time as well. So. All right, so we almost got to 70%, so we'll just talk about the answers. So this first statement, you will always get cancer if you carry a gene mutation. It looks like everyone that responded did get this correct. The answer is no or false. There's no guarantee you're going to get the cancer if you have a gene mutation. You can just be a carrier for the mutation, which leads us into statement 2. You can pass along a cancer-linked mutation even if you don't develop cancer, as we saw from that red, blue, yellow family tree we had, that you can pass along the mutation even if you yourself did not develop the cancer. Statement 3, you can make lifestyle changes to reduce your cancer risk. This is true. Again, we can eat a little bit healthier, exercise more, stay up to date with our cancer screenings and our preventative health care. And the last one, age is the #1 risk factor for cancer. This is also true. As we saw, once things take a while to accumulate, it takes a while for exposures to induce these gene mutations. All right, so we are just going to, if it goes to the next slide. Okay, we're just going to spend the next few slides talking about some resources. So the Life Center at Rutgers Cancer Institute is designed for individuals who are concerned about their risks in developing cancer based on family history. The initial consultation is free of charge, and genetic counselors from the HOPE program also see clients at partner sites in Princeton, Hamilton, Somerset, and Long Branch. The National Cancer Institute and American Cancer Society have wonderful resource pages dedicated to genetic risk assessment, including a wealth of genetic testing and counseling information. Both will be included resources that I will send over to Rachel after the program, and she can send them out to everyone here. There is also, when I was looking for that video, I found this great resource that offers assistance on how to talk to your family about a cancer diagnosis or family cancer risk. It's called Let's Talk, and it actually offers different simulations on working with your family and how to talk to them, because I know it's not always the easiest conversation to have. I always like to just say a bit about a great screening resource available in New Jersey under the New Jersey Department of Health that will be able to assist underserved residents in need of cancer screening. The New Jersey SEED, Cancer Education and Early Detection, provides comprehensive screening services for breast, cervical, prostate, and colorectal cancers. NJ SEED services include education, outreach, early detection, case management, screening, follow-up. And all 4 of the cancers that NJ SEED provides screenings for can be treated more effectively when detected early. In order to utilize the NJ SEED services, a person must be at or below 250% of the federal poverty level. And there is at least one NJ SEED organization in all 21 counties. We also have a patient navigation team here at the Cancer Institute that can help direct community members to cancer screening services and help them with other barriers to seeking those services. They will help anyone regardless of insurance status and regardless of citizenship status, as long as they reside in New Jersey, they can use these services. So that does bring us to the end here, but I believe there are a few more things from Rachel here, if she is available to jump on.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's such a wonderful presentation. I really think a lot of us have really, truly were informed by quite a few things, maybe some areas we weren't really aware of, or maybe just confirming some things that we already knew. But I think it was a great deal of information where we can all try to find some healthy ways to stay, active and proactive and try to do what we can to prevent cancer where we can.
Right.